How's that? All right, we're gonna get ready to run through these. Like Stevie said, most of these are like cleanup. That, you know, over the course of a couple of years, things flag as we process the Constitution. You realize, geez, that's old, that needs to be tweaked. Frankie's kind of gonna run down that list. There's a couple that we want to explain the logic of, one being branding. You know, I know you've heard, you know, some of it, but maybe you need to, I feel the need to explain my logic behind branding. So, with that, I'll kick it over to Frankie, we can start running through these things.
All right, everybody, on the blast through a lot of these. Essentially, we have 29 resolutions. A lot of them are just cleanup language, unless you want to waste time to go in there. We're cleaning up the Constitution, things are in the middle, let's put it in the appendix where it's easier for you to read, that kind of stuff. Trial boards, making it more efficient to get to the process instead of long-term, you know, bureaucracy and all that. Convention minimals, things we're giving back some pennies on a couple of issues like emeriti officers. We just had 2 die. So essentially, it's going to be, we're going to call it cost neutral because we're collecting too much money. And as emeriti are made, they're dying off. Funding a couple years ago because we had a ton of money in it. And unfortunately, our members have been using it and we have to fund it a little bit, right? Increase organizing resources, emeriti, Mark Willett out of the East Coast. Any you know, lowering the amount of time it takes for the GST shop to get the minutes out. They're called proceedings after the convention. We just need that time. We're translating the entire proceedings of the convention into French for our French Canadians. And by the way, we just organized the city of Quebec in this last week, which is another almost 600 members, 590 members. So they don't speak English, so we have to, you know, translate it. So just a lot of little of those like cleanups we'll talk about. Trial board, pre-trial review boards, medical director, you know, we're giving back, I hate giving back money, but 1.5 cents back, because we're just not using that amount of money that we told you we needed, right? IAFF history book, follow up with that, executive leadership training, censor resolutions, which, you know, a lot of people censoring their city managers or the mayors, AI resources, you know, that kind of stuff. And I think I just wanted to blast through amending the elections for the Human Relations Committee. A lot of things that like that, and I think we want to get right into the meat of a couple of those. And if you're good, I mean, that's essentially it. If anybody has questions on the cleanup, non-controversial, it's just, you know, tightening up the language and making it easier for people to read and understand. Other than that, we'll give it back to the GP and leave it here.
I want to make sure too, we're going to be discussing retirees as well. That's one that I think I'd like to voice for sure.
So let's start with that one. One of the DVPs offered a resolution to essentially all IAFF locals would have to offer the ability to stay in the IAFF in their constitutional bylaws, which is something that's kind of happening organically in the last couple of years. Logic being, a lot of the work we do is for retirees, which is great because we all hope to get there someday. And that with the retirees in, there's strength in numbers. You're a stronger local if your active retired members stay in. And you can craft constitutional language in your local's constitution that will dictate what level of participation that they can have. Some locals, my locals have had retirees since 1942, since they chartered. but they can't hold office. Other places, you know, in Memphis comes to mind, Thomas Malone, who's been the president there on and off for probably north of 30 years. Been retired for a long, long time. And it just depends on what fits your local. You're retired, Johnny Bass retired. It depends what fits your local, what you want, right? And at the end of the day, what this resolution does is basically forces every local to change your constitution to allow it to stay. It accelerates what's kind of happening organically. It was a vote on the executive board. I happen to think my goal is to every day get up and leave it better than we found it and push through. And I think that's an important, it will help us in the long run. I get it, people push back and want local autonomy, and that'll be the argument, whether or not the international, which the supreme authority of the international is the delegates in the Florida Convention. What they say goes. And this particular concept is to try to accelerate that, keeping the retirees in the union and swelling our ranks that way. The other thing I'll tell you about retirees, they're workhorses. You know, all of that time on their hands, when you need, yeah. Except Lopez, he's a great golfer. Can't be both. And some of them actually, you know, if they made it through their careers and were fiscally prudent, some of them actually have money they want to help the local and pay back a little. And that's I think it's a strong, I think it'll make the union strong in the long run. So that got just so you know, we vote at the executive board, we have like a gentleman's agreement that if 2/3 of the board, which is 12, vote to support a resolution, we call it an executive board resolution.
Thanks, GP. Now, a lot of what the GP said, I agree with. I'll start off with that. There's two things that he mentioned right there. We passed a resolution last convention that highly encouraged us to accept retirees in our locals. And just as he said, we are doing that. We are adding a lot of retirees in our constitution. The issue that I have personally with this is this. You mentioned local autonomy. We are a bottom-up organization, not a top-down organization. So for us to tell somebody they have to have somebody in their local, I have an issue with it. I have retirees in my local. We've changed our constitution bylaws. I also have battalion chiefs. And I don't think it's mandatory for you to have battalion chiefs. So when it comes to local autonomy, that is something I take incredibly seriously. Are retirees good? Yes. Are we moving that direction? Absolutely. When I voiced my opinion on the board, it was, we're moving in the right direction. Why are we forcing this down everybody's throat? That is my issue with this resolution. It's that it's stripping local autonomy away. The delegates do decide. But the delegates should also be able to decide who they have in their local. Kind of like we're going to get into the state name change in Brandon. That's my biggest issue with this. It's not anything against retirees. I know a lot of good retirees, like we just said. My issue is sole and simple. It seems like we're reversing course and saying, we're going to tell you what is best for you, which sometimes we need to do. Don't get me wrong, we do it all the time. But in this case, stripping autonomy away, changing the constitution bylaws, in some of these instances, is problematic for me. Where does it end? And when we get into the branding, we can talk about that too.
Yeah, there's just clarify that, like, we are a bottoms-up organization, we're not top-down, we don't run states, etc. But the bottom, if you will, if that's what you want to call it, the locals, are the supreme authority, and they exercise that authority by electing delegates and sending them to convention, and that's the voice of the floor. So it actually would be, Frank and I and the executive board can't tell you that you have to do it. But the bottom, if that's what we want to call it, can. Right? The boss of the union under the Constitution is the delegates that the members send to convention. So that's where it's kind of like, if we can see the vision of it, if the delegates assemble, think it's good to give that, accelerate that growth, it will be strong in the long run. And the locals have to craft their constitution that says, hey, we don't want battalion chiefs, that's what it says. Like, if you want to exempt ranks out, like, that's something that your local constitution, if you're going to adopt it, has to dictate. That's where your autonomy comes in. What do you want? Go ahead, Bags.
Regarding retirees, quick question regarding the retirees. The vector right now regarding the fallen firefighters memorial. I know we're like kind of in this in between right now. And can you speak about that on where we are with the necessity to be retired active to be eligible for the wall?
So what, to go on our wall in Colorado says you have to be a member. And kind of unbeknownst to us, if you will, we were putting a lot of non-people that were not dues-paying members on the wall. And basically the concept was, well, they were good members back in their day. And it stemmed from great legislation that they had in Canada that basically says every single person that dies of a job-related cancer in Canada is eligible for their public safety officer benefit, which is known as a Memorial Grant in Canada. So basically, if you're 101 years old and you've been retired for 50 years and you die of cancer, you're entitled to that grant, which in our policy, if the government recognizes your deathless line of duty, put you on the wall. And what we came to realize was, even though our forefathers contemplated retirees staying in the Union for I don't know how long, man, it was 1918 or whatever, for time of return, a long time. Some locals decided they didn't want them, or they didn't have it, it was in the culture, whatever the deal was. They didn't allow them to stay in their union. But we are a union of membership, right? And the board said, you know what? You really should be a member. If you want to be a member, join. And if you don't want to be a member, you don't have to. But you're not entitled to the benefits of membership. We can't float this thing free. And one of those benefits of membership is that if you die in the line of duty, you go on our wall and call it on those rights. And that's where this argument kind of, the rubber hits the road on it. And there's Canadians that feel very strongly that, well, if you're paying dues for 25 years or 30 years, then you should be covered no matter what. Which almost has the reverse effect. Because if that's the case, why would all of our retirees that are paying dues, why should they have to? If membership is, if you hit a threshold that says, hey, if I retire, you should consider me a member no matter what, right? So the way our Constitution reads, our dues is 19, remember it was 57. A retiree under our IAFF Constitution has to pay half of whatever the active members pay. So it's, $10 a month, whatever it is. So that's what your dues structure is a local autonomous decision. What the IAFF dues structure is set by the delegates of convention. And what our Constitution says in its half. So I don't know if that helps you.
And correct me if I'm wrong, GP, I think what had happened is the executive board didn't say, that's right. What we did is say, this is the policy that is in perpetuity been applied incorrectly.
Correct.
Here's what the policy says, and now you've got to actually follow policy, because you'd be able to go online and pull up somebody from 20 years ago that hasn't paid dues. And what we found out is that was a bug in the system, and that we were doing it wrong. So we as an executive board saying that if the policy says it's clear, let's get this to the delegates and let the delegates be the decision on whether or not they want to revert to a past practice of not charging them or go forward saying, you know what, they're going to be dues paying members.
So I think part of all conventions, whether it's the state conventions or whatever, it's about tightening it up, making it stronger, etc. One of the weird places that we found ourselves in, that I don't think we anticipated, was we had the first of its kind World Fire Congress in Washington, D.C. 2 years ago that we participated in. And I gave a real brief overview of what the IAFF does, just because, there was literally 50, 60 countries in the world. And as soon as I was done speaking, we kind of got swarmed by countries saying, we want to join, how do we join? And it was like, oh, hey, slow down. We're a union. We're under the federal government's labor laws with both countries. So we're not really looking for members from all over the world, but after talking with them, they're not really looking to get our communication sharp to help them or get we're not gonna lobby their respective houses of government for them. That's their job. We're not gonna intervene on their collective bargaining. But what we have that we all paid for and continue to pay for is we've amassed a significant amount of health and safety value that translates around the globe. And honestly, that health and safety value that we paid for has some monetary value to firefighters around the globe. Now, I'm not looking, I've got a soft spot in my heart for all firefighters. Volunteer, paid, foreign countries, wherever, right? I mean, you can knock on the door of a firehouse in a foreign country, show your tin, and they're gonna take care of it, just like we would do. It's a brotherhood and sisterhood that transcends language, borders, politics, currency. So I have that in my heart, but at the same time, I know that they want to be a part of what we're doing. And quite frankly, money matters. If we have more money, we can do more for the veterans. So we beat it around the executive board and kind of said, well, we really can't do anything as far as trying to introduce some sort of a global type membership unless the bosses, the delegates assembled at the convention, say it's okay for you to pursue it, because it's a change. Now, the concept would be, hey, if you want to be a part of, and you want access to our health and safety data, maybe even TIR, right? Maybe a GIS study applies somewhere in other parts of the globe, right? If you want to, I don't know what a deal is, because currency is all over the place, right? I mean, a country that's struggling is not going to pay us 1957 American per head to join this union. Conversely, all the training that we're really getting going has global traction, whether it's the ship firefighting, lithium-ion batteries, battery storage facilities. No one has the expertise that we have to develop this training. If we were to offer it to some of these other countries that are extremely, extremely rich and told them you gotta pay us 1957 American per head, it'd probably be laughable. It'd be like, Dr. Evil trying to blow up the world for $1 million, right? And it'd be like, that's nothing to us. So we have to figure out if we're gonna do this, which I think that there's value. If we can get revenue into the union and then in exchange for our intellectual property, which by the way is probably Googleable, then there's value in that to us as the rank and file members. And it's not a one size fits all. It's something that we as an executive board have to figure out what is fair to us as members that are paid for all this intellectual property and what's fair for some other country to join. We just sent Evan Davis, who's our legislative director, on a DOL trip to Germany. And he talked about the IAFF in the forum and basically got the same thing. These countries want to be a part of, they see what we're doing, they know that they will be safer firefighters if they had access to it. And we're just trying to figure out a way, we want them to be safer. We're not trying to hold on to this because we just want to headlock what we have. We want it, but we also want the value that we've invested in it to have a return for us so we can be a stronger union. That's the concept of the global resolution. Charlie, I see your hand up.
I'll just ask, would that expand into the Department of Defense bases in Europe and Asia?
Potentially, we'll have to figure that out. I think that what I see value in is getting money into the union to make us stronger with the stuff that we're paid for, that quite frankly will make other people safer. But we gotta find a way to make it work.
And to the GP's point, so they introduced this at E-Board and as a resolution. And initially, the amended resolutions now are different. I cannot support the original resolution, let me tell you why. The original resolution had a lot of not clear language about we would negotiate almost a pay-to-play type fee. Some locals could pay less, some locals could pay more, the executive board would make a decision. It would be non-voting, which I agree with 100%. However, in some instances, we may represent them in some labor issues. Some instances, we may do this. My biggest issue, he said, we've paid for all these resources that we've had. We've paid for everything that we have, that we provide to our members, have been paid with dues money. I was not okay with anybody coming in paying less than a member who makes barely minimum wage in New Mexico, who struggles to make those payments, but has made it a priority. Will this price some people out worldwide? Yes. Does that suck? Sure. I agree with that. But it sucks for some of our members to struggle every 2 weeks and still make that commitment to pay the $19.59. So as the amended resolution stands, I'm 100% for. I just don't think we should walk backwards from the amendment and say we're going to negotiate. Because I'm sure there's plenty of big locals in here too that don't use a lot of resources that are part of the IAFF. Do they have a voting voice? Sure. Do they have potential access resources? Sure. But is that a dangerous slope to go, well, shit, we want pay to play. We don't really use you. What if we just pay $10 a month because there's 3,000 of us? I'm not okay with that. I think everybody should be paying the same. Well, the argument's going to be, well, Canadians pay a little bit less because of the currency. Sure, they're already in. If we're going to go and expand globally, then they should be doing the same thing that our members do every 2 weeks and putting it up to the same amount. Because again, we pay for these resources that we want to share. And I think it's great that we want to keep everybody safe. And I think it's great that we want to expand the IAFF globally. But our priority should still be the members here. We're paying $19.59, going to pay a little bit more with the CPI. So this resolution I support as amended right now. But again, I will not support it, and I don't think we can support it if we're going to walk it back and negotiate fees. Just not where I think we need to be.
For the record, that's what the E-board supported.
Yeah, it was unanimous, amended.
So, next one is the fun one, right? Branding, which I know all you guys are excited about. And I want to tell you, I'm not losing my mind. I'm just sitting in a different seat with a different lens. And I'm seeing things that probably most of you guys can't see. But it's also my job to tell you what I'm seeing and tell you what I feel is a path to strengthen the union. And from where I'm at, I can see that there's a lot of brand confusion, right? We grew up in the IAFF. We know who our state association is theoretically. I mean, I was state president in Massachusetts, and I had a Boston member come up and go, way down the international, huh? And I said, no, I'm up at the state. I'm the state president. He goes, what's that? I said, the state association is called the Professional Firefighters of Massachusetts. He's like, never heard of it. You know, which at the end of the day, we got 366,000 members. I bet you 100, if not hundreds of thousands of our members don't really, they pay their dues. They know where to go if they get in trouble, or who to call. And they want us to just do our jobs. Maybe we can grab them on a Saturday morning, hold a sign for a contract fight, but by and large, they pay their dues and they want to just live their life. Those of us that are engaged in the union, in leadership, we know exactly who our state and provincial association is. By the way, the province is Canadian. It's basically the equivalent of a state. So the history of our state associations, we had, I think, 30 or 32 locals charter the IAFF in 1918. And over the course of time, in most cases decades, if not a lot of decades later, those chartered locals, which were basically the cities and then grew into some towns, primarily along the railroad system, decided that they needed a voice in their respective state houses. So under the Constitution of the IAFF, which is mirrored and based off of a lot of other international unions, there's a provision that allows for like joint councils. And essentially the state associations were crafted in a
articles of the Constitution, which essentially allow for them to become the equivalent of joint council, with the intent initially to lobby. Now, over the course of, half a century, in some cases close to 60 or 80 years, state associations have morphed, they've grown, and depending on where you are, some are far more sophisticated than others. Some pay, $25, $26 a month in dues. Some were at $1. It's kind of all over the place. What I see where I'm at is that, one, there's, I don't even know, how many states start with the letter M? Massachusetts, Mississippi, Montana, Missouri, whoever else, right? We have a lot of PFFMs. I mean, if Frankie and I got put under a lamp and said, tell us every state organization's name, I couldn't do it, right? I forget whether it's the Professional Firefighters in North Carolina, or the North Carolina Professional Firefighters Association, North Carolina Professional Firefighters and Paramedics Association. And one of the challenges we have in all this confusion, we have basically 57 different brands in the IAFF when it comes to the major political arenas, starting with Congress, all the state houses, provincial houses in Canada. So I did anyways, for granted that in the bubble that we grew up in, everyone knows who we are, and it's not a problem. What I've come to learn, sitting in the seat that I'm in, is that it is confusing. That there's a lot of different firefighter organizations, and not every elected official knows that the PFF, the New Mexico Professional Firefighters Association, is part of a 366,000 member international union, right? And certainly not every staffer who makes the sausage identifies the IAFF with wherever their back home firefighters are. And by the way, we're also in a place where, when you look at the other international unions, whether it's the Carpenters or the Teamsters or the IBW, you know who they are. It's clear as day. But they don't have similar volunteer associations. None of the volunteer Teamsters of New Mexico lobbying in the State House. They don't have the fire marshals. They don't have the chiefs. They don't have the metro chiefs. They don't have nonprofits. They don't have the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. They don't have all of these different, quite frankly, confusing brands. The one brand that's powerful is firefighter, but we don't own that. There's a lot of firefighter organizations in this country, lobbying in state houses and Congress. And from the outside looking in, I keep seeing it, now I can't unsee it. We had the Alberta Professional Firefighters Association, Firefighters and Paramedics Association in Canada. We have 200 IAFF, single role, provincial employee, paramedics that they're privatizing. So our provincial president was trying to get into the premier, which is the governor's office, and couldn't get a meeting, and he sent an emissary to kind of say, hey, you got to sit down with the firefighters. And the feedback that he got was, the premier said she's already met with the firefighters 4 times. So we don't have the brand that we think we do. We have firefighter. That's a powerful brand. When we talked to the Congresswoman earlier, she said, I love firefighters. I got so much passion for firefighters. Firefighters are incredible. And most of them aren't paid. Like 60% of them are volunteers, and that's true. But we get confused. They own the firefighter brand too. And when, I talked to the Kentucky president, maybe it was Kansas, and he said, we're the Kansas Professional Firefighters Association. The volunteers are the Kansas Firefighters Association. He said, so every time I gotta walk through the door, I gotta explain to whoever I'm trying to lobby that we ain't them, we're different. And somewhere along the way, as all of our state associations grew and changed, a lot of them changed their name to throw professional in there.
with the assumption that that's going to be the trigger that separates us from the volleys, right? It obviously doesn't work that way. What they see is firefighter. And I sat down for an interview. We lost an unbelievable guy named Bobby Kilduff-Finaldo, the line of duty at a fire. And myself and our president of Boston were sitting down for an interview with one of the longtime, reporter in the area. Grew up there. And he said, so, Sam, you're the local IAFF president, and you're the national IAFF president, but the PFFM, they're a completely separate organization, correct? And I'm like, this is the problem. This is what the outside world doesn't see. And we see in the federal government, right? We had, the Biden administration gave about $160 million grant to a privatized fire department up in the Pacific Northwest. I think they're out of Montana. And when we said, hey, what are you doing? They said, well, taking care of the firefighters, right? Oh, you'd be happy about that. There's a lot of confusion there. We went to, met with the chief of staff of OMB, which is basically they control every line in the federal budget. And we're trying to get a couple of bucks to help us fund doing all the backlog on PSOB claim filings. And she said, okay, let me get back to you in a week, we'll talk. She came back, she says, geez, I talked to my people, we're already giving the firefighters grant money. And the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, nonprofit like us, went to the federal government and got $6 million. This is prior to the HEROES Act being passed, to process claims over 3 years. The brand confusion that we have at the federal level is tough. Wildland firefighters, I was on Air Force One with the Biden administration, talking to the special assistant to the president for Homeland Security. And I was explaining to her the threat of wildfire in the United States and how we as firefighters tend to get killed in numbers, usually 2 ways. One, a building collapse, and 2, getting run over in a wildfire. And we have a lot of firefighters in this country who are not trained at all in wildfire that are getting dispatched to these fires because they happen to be, when large RTI fires hit in places where they're not, basically outside of California and a few other states, they call the nearest city and say, I need 10 or 20 engines right away. So you've got basically untrained city firefighters with bunker gear on, flying out, just like it happened in Denver a couple of Christmases ago where they had a grass fire that burnt 1,000 homes. Those guys in downtown Denver, red phone rang in the middle of the night and said, yeah, get on the highway and head out to that fire. When I explained the problem to the special assistant to the president, she said, well, if you talk to Chief Brown about it. And I said, I go, which Chief Brown would that be? She says, Chief Brown, the chief of the fire department. I said, who's that? She said, he's the chief of, who's Brown? They're the fire chief. Like, oh, he works for the forest, Department of Forestry. And I said, yeah, that's not enough people. We're the city firefighters. There's 300,000 of us in this country. We are actually, it'd be easy for me to come here and say, we're all powerful, we're kicking ass, blah, 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 blah. I'm telling you, we could be stronger. One of the ways that's glaring is that we're not all seen as the same. And the concept behind rebranding, as distasteful as it is, because a lot of us, I'll say up front, I was a state president. If this got brought to me 12, 15 years ago, I'd probably be saying, this is crazy. This will hurt us. We got a nice brand. We're getting things done where I'm from. But after I thought about it and chewed on it for a while, I would see the merit in being able to walk into a politician's office, who, like I said, all politicians want to move up, in being visibly part of something much greater than even our biggest state association, in California. You can say I represent 35,000 firefighters in California. we can say, I speak for the firefighters in California on behalf of 366,000 IAFF members across the country, right? Now that's powerful for California. That's really powerful for smaller states. That's really powerful for Montana that walks into an elected's office and says, I represent 300 firefighters in Montana, instead of saying, I'm the voice of firefighters in Montana on behalf of 366,000 IAFF members. And that list just keeps going on and on. When we were in the Canadian Prime Minister's office, which is like their president, he was, at the time, he may still be the most popular politician on the planet. His approval rating was like high 70s or something. And I kind of ran this by him. I said, and granted, he came from the banking industry. He was a brand new politician. His first elected office was basically president of his country, prime minister, sorry. And I said, we're the IAFF. We're in two countries. We're based in DC, we're based in Ottawa. But we have provincial associations all across Canada. And I'm explaining to him that the BC PFFA, OPFFA, the Atlantic provinces, explaining how it's structured and how we're named. And I said, one thing we're considering is maybe trying to rebrand ourselves instead of being the British Columbia Professional Firefighters Association. And then we come lobby Congress as IAFF. If we were just IAFF British Columbia, IAFF Alberta, IAFF Saskatchewan, IAFF Ontario. He's like, that makes a lot of sense. To the outside looking in, who don't have the emotional attachments that we have, that don't have, and I got an ego, we don't have our own egos that are kind of fighting against change. What I've noticed is a lot of our junior members, our younger IAFF members, see the merit in building a stronger brand, especially in this day and age when everyone gets their news through their phones, and branding matters. And I think that a lot of the benefit of this change would be from the outside looking in. But a good part of the benefit of this change would be for our rank and file members that see what the state associations are doing and how hard they're working for them, the wins that they're getting and the bad stuff they're stopping, combined with the IAFF and the work that we're doing at all levels, health and safety, etc. Our members will understand more about what the IAFF is, what the union is, what their dues goes to. And I think in the big picture, we're gonna have a stronger union. And for us that are sitting in office right now, it kind of tastes like medicine going down. Doesn't taste good. But I can tell you, they rebranded Twitter. Most of your healthcare plans are billion-dollar plans. A lot of them are rebranding. If you can rebrand Twitter, you can rebrand the state association. And I think in the big picture, in the long run, for those kids that are just graduating high school this month, who are gonna come on our jobs in 3, 4, 5 years, the IAFF that they swear themselves into will be much stronger if we make this change. And I look at it for me, like, I get it. Like, I would, until I really slept on this thing a few nights, it might take me a lot of nights for me to get it. But if for whatever reason, my mayor came to me and said, hey, Dad, I like you. I'm gonna build a new firehouse in the city this year's budget. How about I rebuild your firehouse? My first thought would be like, shit. Because I don't wanna move my crap out of my locker. My father was in my firehouse. I went to my firehouse on the way home from hospital to the firehouse I'm in on the way home from the hospital I was born in, before I went to the house I grew up in. I'm there longer than anybody else in that house. I got a lot of emotional attachment to the building itself. I grew up there. I was on Santa Claus' lap in the TV room. I buried a lot of friends in that house. My instinct would be, nah, go build one in East Boston or West Roxbury or something. We're fine here. Thank you very much, Mayor. Appreciate you thinking of me. But that would be pretty selfish on my part. Because some kid that's graduating high school is gonna get assigned to that firehouse in 3 or 4 years, and he'd be walking into a house that had hot and cold zones, that had decontamination showers, that had the ability to train in quarters. It would be selfish on my end. And as distasteful as it is, change sucks, I hate it. I can't unsee what I see. And I tell you, I get it, everyone doesn't want it, everyone's against it. You'll hear Stevie in a minute. I know if we sucked it up and made this change, one, it wouldn't be as bad as we think, kind of like most challenges. And once we do it, there's a subconscious benefit to this that's gonna make the union stronger inside and from the outside looking in. So I'll turn it over to Frankie now, I know he's got a few things to say.
Thank you, GP. Can I get back on the retiree one real quick? Yeah, on the retiree one, has nothing to do with taking your autonomy away. Right now, there's not a path for your members that retire to be retired active members if they go, you know what, Jim? Keep me in as a retiree, I'll pay half dues, and you go, you can't because it's not in our Constitution. So all this does is give them a path. It doesn't force every retiree to be in the union. And it lets the local actually, quite the opposite, keep their autonomy, because then they can go, you know what? These retirees, we'll let them come in if they want to, which is more revenue to the local and to the IAFF. And we could say, you know what? We don't think they should be in the elections. They can't vote for our elections. They can't run for office. They can't run for office, whatever you want to do. So I just wanted to clear that up. On the branding, you know, when you look at it, I know there's been some stances taken before even the facts of the branding were even brought up. And it's good to hear from the GP because he's bringing it up for a reason. Not to be disrespectful, has nothing to do with taking your autonomy away. You know, the IAFF could endorse A for President of the United States, and IAFF in Iowa, professional firefighters, can endorse a different candidate. That's how it's been, that's how it is now, and there's no intention to change that, and there's nothing that says that will change. So autonomy stays the autonomy. When you look at, and I was bringing up with, I got Doc back there, you know, CPF president, and you bring it up like, say the Jimmy Hoffa's, a couple of general presidents roll up in front of the CPF building, and he goes, California professional firefighters. All right, they're firefighters. I wonder if they're unionized. I don't, if it said California professional firefighters, IAFF California, they go, oh, they're in the IAFF, they're in the union. But the CPF isn't a union. Okay, it's a, you know, where do you find them in the AFL? You go and sit down in the area where it says IAFF. Doc, picking on you again.
Go ahead.
Not picking on you. No, actually, one of the greatest leaders in this room. I'm sitting down with Brad Sherman, senior ranking member in Congress, many years. That's 1,000 for us. Out of San Fernando Valley, runs the Jewish communities. He's incredible for our members. And my phone's face down on the table. Actually, Kevin was there too as well. He goes, hey Frank, who's that sticker on the back of your phone? I said, oh, it's my friend Doc out of Chula Vista. He's running for CPF president. Chula Vista. He's going to win. Yeah, he's the guy. Blah, blah, blah. And he goes, so are they related to you guys? Like, are they, what's the CPF? And I had to kind of explain it to him. So it wants merit to what the GP's saying, when a week later, when he first brought it up, I slept on it and I didn't agree with him. But when you go, all right, this guy, I equated, I'm a truck captain, and when I get up to the roof and running roof division, I equate it to this. He's up on the roof and he's going, I'm calling on the decision makers because I can see something you can't. When I'm on the roof, the IC can't see what I see. And I go, hey, I need 2 more trucks up here. That's essentially what he's saying. Be more efficient. And, you know, my Teresa back there. If we need to write a letter to the firefighters state organization in North Dakota, that is it professional on the front end or professional firefighters in North Dakota? Is it the North Dakota professional firefighters? Do they have paramedic in their name? Or they're Illinois, they're affiliated firefighters of Illinois, the IAFF? It's all over the map. So it would make it a little better, but that's it, you know. And the executive board voted in favor of this, 10-8. So it's not a why, and we have a kind of a gentleman's agreement that unless it's a 3/4, 75% threshold, kind of the same threshold that it takes to vote a local into conservatorship, it's a high bar. So it didn't get to 3/4, but the majority of the executive board voted in favor for this. So that's all I have.
Real quick on that vote, had it been a regular meeting, we would have been able to do a per cap vote. 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16 were against it. Would have been an overwhelming majority in a per cap vote. Just to clear that up. Did it meet the gentleman's agreement? It did not. Let me talk about organizing, because a lot of people in here know how passionate I am about organizing. When I organize, I always tell everybody, we try to organize in the right way, meaning we don't organize everybody like some DVPs. We don't always organize privates that are going to negatively impact our existing locals. My biggest goal as your DVP, when I organize, is to try to do no harm. So I want to talk about what I think potentially will happen if this name change goes through. I'm going to start with my home state. First, I don't care where you're at in your politics, Arizona, right? Highly conservative. I joke around all the time. I say it's the place where they vote for unborn fetuses to carry concealed weapons paid for by school vouchers. Right? And we've just learned of a new bill. So for everybody in this room from Arizona, if this is brand new news, Dan's going to be sending out this later, that has slipped into the budget that will potentially strip away bargaining rights for every public sector union in Arizona, essentially making us South Carolina, North Carolina. It'd be illegal for us to bargain. And we do really well doing meet and confer and getting MOUs. So when I tell you that if we become IAFF Arizona and the right-wing leadership finds out now somehow we're no longer the firefighters because we swallow our pride when we go knock on these doors to advocate for our members, and we don't tell them union, we tell them we're the firefighters. If they all of a sudden see we are IAFF Arizona and they say, you're the big DC union? Get the fuck out of my office. I guarantee you, you can ask Tim Hill, who's in this room, Brian Jeffries, Dan Freiberg, Donnie Youngberg, who've navigated those halls in the Capitol. If they were associated with a big union in Washington, D.C., how that would impact our members, it would be bad. It would be bad. Now, some of the points the General President made that Montana would now be able to go, hey, we're now IAFF Montana, we're part of 365,000. Take a look at some of the videos when I'm yelling at city councils. I always start off with, I represent 57,000, whatever we're at the time, 55,000. Right now, we're 57,112 strong. I always start off with, I represent Hawaii, California, Arizona, New Mexico, and the Mariana Islands, 57,000 firefighters and 365,000 firefighters in North America. There's nothing that prevents Montana from saying that now. They can say it now. They don't have to be IAFF Montana. It just doesn't do it. And two things. If you can show me a piece of legislation that failed because we were not IAFF California, or if you could show me right now that all of a sudden if I flipped the light switch and I became IAFF Arizona, that we could kill that bill with impunity, with no problem. It's not going to happen. That switch of the brand is not going to happen. And we talk about politicians that don't know us. We have as many stories of politicians who do know us. The GPS, Teresa Fernandez, this morning. Hey, did you know the New Mexico professional firefighters are part of the IAFF? Her response? Of course I do. So for every story of a politician not knowing us, There's a million politicians who do. All right, and that's not going to change. Our friends or the people that need to know who we are usually know who we are. The ones who don't usually don't give a shit or aren't that engaged or only coming around asking for money. So I think that changing the brand is a problem or a solution looking for a problem. There is nothing that says Professional Firefighters of Arizona is bad for the IAFF. And I'm sorry, the fact that I've got to look up local names. We have 291 locals in the tent. I don't know every local's name. That doesn't mean we have a branding problem with San Bernardino County. That doesn't mean, I have to look up sometimes, I'm sorry, if you're going to look up an email, it's okay. We shouldn't change the whole brand because of it. It's not something that is going to be so critical that it's going to happen. So I just want to say again, respectfully, this is something I highly disagree with the General President, General Secretary. It's not personal. It's just what I believe. I believe that this is unnecessary. The state of California passed a resolution unanimously said that this is unnecessary. Arizona has passed a resolution, thunderous applause unanimously, that this is unnecessary. The state of Hawaii is against it. The New Mexico leadership is against it. To me, it is just not something that needs to be done. Now, if we want to encourage locals, again, we're talking about autonomy. If we want to encourage locals, like, hey, if you think this is good, Montana, and you want to call yourself IAFF Montana, have at it. But there's zero reason to force every state to change their brand, especially when it's going to cost them money. It's going to cost California a lot of money. You can sit down with Mike Lopez and ask him exactly how much. He'll tell you that. All right, and you're going to hear, well, you can just sign a piece of paper and say doing business as. It's a little bit more complicated than that. So again, politicians, some of them aren't going to know who we are. We got to live with that. Our members aren't always engaged. Don't understand that they belong to a state local. Don't even understand they belong to the IAFF. They know who their home local is. And we try to change that with education, but again, flipping the light switch and calling us IAFF Arizona, IAFF New Mexico isn't going to fix that. It's not going to be done overnight. It's going to cause a lot of consternation on a lot of effort of brands that have been built proudly over decades. And it's politicians that do know that brand who are going to walk in one day and go, what the hell do you mean you're IAFF California? Why? So again, it's no disrespect to the GP. I get it, he's looking at this globally. I'm looking at it district-wide, and especially looking at it from my home state. If this can cause harm, I'm sure it could cause some other harm in some locals in the South. And again, just what I believe, what I'm passionate about. I've been a no from the beginning. Interacted with my state presidents, found out that they were the same way after I voted. So that's my piece. And again, GP, honestly, no disrespect, you know that. Just different opinion, GST, same thing. Got the world of respect for you, it's just what I believe.
Steve, one thing I failed to mention was that if you do incur costs, the IAFF is willing to help you with those costs as a state association. And if you talk to Secretary Treasurer Lopez, he'll tell you they costed it out at $750,000, which is an impossible number. I'd like to know who did that math.
My finance director.
I'm a fireman. Listen, we're on different sides on this one, right? And like I said to you earlier, I see it the way I see it. I think we'll be stronger in the long run. And notwithstanding the headwinds, knowing what they were and what they're going to be, I'd be a coward as your general president to come out here and take them straight in your face, straight in the face. If you don't want the politicians to know you're part of the union, I don't know what to tell you. That's a quagmire, because that's what we are. And that's how we've garnered all the success that we have. And I wish you guys, like I said earlier in my speech, whatever divides us pales in comparison to what unites us. And the fact that we're in disagreement on something means we're doing our jobs. Because if we're all bobbling our heads, we're going to go off a cliff. You know, this dissension keeps us honest. Iron sharpens iron, like Frankie says.
let me just get one more thing, and if anything, it educates you. Who here knows what the State Association of the California Firefighters name was in, say, 1985? The Federated Firefighters of California, not the California Professional Firefighters. So,
Why did we change? Tell us why. Because it didn't fit what we were doing. That's why we changed.
the reason for the change, you're absolutely right. So, but at the time, they came across an idea and changed it. Just, it's good to let people know. That had been the CPF since the 30s. There are a lot of different, you know, they changed their brand at that point for a particular reason. That's all.
And I guess one final point, and there are a couple more resolutions I want to go over that CPF did submit, that I'd like to talk about. But one last point on this branding. We love, all of us have used it, we love to talk about the 3 lanes of the IAFF. Local lane, state lane, we always joke around the fast lane is the IAFF. In my opinion, what this does, a good friend of mine made this analogy for me, takes us from a 3-lane highway to a single lane and a carpool lane. IAFF, Arizona, IAFF, California, it's doing away with the state brands. And again, sometimes we need to operate independently from the IAFF. Sometimes we need, at the state level, your autonomy to do what you need to do and not have it confused with IAFF. We all have a very similar mission. We're all here for our members, but we do not need, again, a change of brand. Question, Casey?
So if this were to go through a convention in Arlington and the leadership says, you're now, this is how you all have to turn yourself to be a part of the IAFF, and the largest district in the IAFF says go pack sand, you just cut that state association off altogether, and it's not, like, how are you gonna handle that? If you can name it.
Yeah, so basically what it says is, if the delegates assemble for the leadership, right? Right, we'll cover that, right? It's not, I can't tell you to do this, Franklin can't tell you to do this, the executive board can't tell you to do this. It has to be the delegates assembled to tell you to do it. And if the delegates assemble say that this is how we want to run the union, then that's a new constitution. That's how it is. If you decide you want to go at it on your own, I mean, if you, sure, Steve, you would gladly run the Pacific Southwest Firefighters Union, and you know, he got his own comp shop. Guys are all set up to go. You don't need the IAFF financial core, right? So it is what it is. If you're in violation of the Constitution, then you're in violation of the will of the membership.
So GP, I just want to clarify. So if it's a constitutional change, requires 2/3 of the membership.
I'd have to double check exactly what that says.
Because if we're changing, you're saying it's a constitutional change, we're going to change. Understanding, Robert's Rule, I think it says in our CPL. Robert's Rule of Order says if you're altering constitutional bylaws, it requires 2/3 vote of the delegates.
Yeah, I'd have to check it. I forget what it says. It's possible.
And I guess just kind of going back to that, it almost is, what's the worth of it if you're running the risk of then creating more division in the long run, when it almost seems like I want to do reconstructive surgery on my toe because my middle toe's longer than I like it. And I want to just be able to not explain it that way. I'm going to have to go in and explain the associations I'm with to begin with. We deal with people all the time that don't know the difference between a firefighter, an engineer, and a captain. People that don't know the difference between a paramedic and an EMT. A volunteer versus a professional firefighter. A professional firefighter that's associated, a professional firefighter that's not. And then you run the risk of essentially cutting off 10-8, 8-10, number-wise. That just seems like an interesting, and I'm not disagreeing with the intent of a branding and coming from the corporate world and where, if you can identify that brand, it just seems like you're just running the risk of cutting a bunch of people off for not that much of a gain.
Yeah, I don't know if it's not that much of a gain. I think what it is if we over emotional arguments and look at it as a tactical argument, our brand matters because we sink or swim in the political arena, period. And like I said, I can't do anything with Arizona that doesn't want the Republicans to know they're part of the IAFF. I can't solve that puzzle. That's a different world. Which I'm not sure it's any different than Montana or Alabama or Mississippi, places where Republicans run everything. Like the US Congress, right, where we do pretty good. If, the 10th district is gonna peel off over this, one, I think that would be a shame. I think that it would be a condemnation of ego. And I think that what we're trying to endeavor here is to make the future firefighters in the IAFF stronger. And this brand concept, brand matters now more than ever. And our ability to be strong in the political arena, notwithstanding us pounding our chest saying we already are. Sometimes. We're not kicking ass everywhere. And this is the way to do it. It doesn't come at, in my opinion, much of a cost. I think it would make the IAFF distinguishable far easier than all those other firefighter brands. That's an impediment to change. And in my head, the struggle is worth it in the long run. And if in your head it's not, I know you're not advocating pull out, I think it'd be pretty harsh. I don't think you would have all the 8th district pulling out. I don't think all the 12th district would be pulling out. I think everyone would get pissed off for a little bit and think, oh, what are we gonna do now? Call a lawyer. Bring in someone to file the paperwork. Buy new t-shirts, right? Eventually, and clean up the websites, all of which we could help with. And at the end of the day, we just have a much stronger brand, which our brand matters. It dictates our success.
GP, and JST, thank you for coming out and saying this directly to the 10th. It means a lot. I truly believe that you believe in your heart that this is going to help the IAFF. And so I don't fault you for doing that. A lot of your arguments make sense. And a lot of the people's here arguments also make sense. I've heard many of them. So thank you for starting this conversation. I think it's a fun one. Arlington will also be fun. So you at least have made a good convention. I think my main question is, and this is what I've been dealing with in my amalgam in both departments, is chiefs, deputy chiefs, they get there and they want to push stuff on firefighters. And in my experience, firefighters push back when you make them do something. So my only question is, why does it have to be everybody? Why can't, if it makes sense politically in the House of Arizona, let them do their thing. If it makes sense politically in the House of Montana, let them be IAFF Montana. I just don't understand why the force will hang.
I'll tell you, the concept is, it may, this is gonna get on the floor. Members the delegates are in charge. Who knows what ends up happening on the floor of the convention? Who knows? It could end up that way, right? And the concept from the executive board, for me and Frank, is if this becomes voluntary, then no one's gonna do it. And if we don't do it, then we're not being as strong as we can. And it's our job as the current leadership to create discomfort in order to grow. Because that's how we grow. I don't mean specifically in numbers, I mean in strength. And, I won't beat a dead horse, but this change ain't about us in the room. It's about the next generation inheriting something from us that is stronger than what we currently have. And I firmly believe that if we did that, it won't be a light switch. It won't happen overnight. But as we work and do the work, and they're reading about us on their cell phones, and they're seeing that some congressional district that's a battleground that's gonna dictate who has the speakership, who has the balance of power in the US Congress, that if the, Nevada professional firefighters, whatever they are, whatever their title is, endorses a particular candidate, in this case R or D, they don't necessarily know that the professional firefighters in Nevada are part of the New Mexico Professional Firefighters Association. And quite frankly, 20 years ago, they wouldn't even know if some firefighter association endorsed anybody in that race because they'd be reading their crack in the newspaper in the morning, and they probably wouldn't tell them. But nowadays, if you're following that race, you're gonna see it right away. You're gonna know. But what you don't know is whether that's the Volleys, whether that's the IAFF that you might identify with because your firefighters are part of that union. That's the brand difference. It's not a light switch, it's something that's gonna slowly take shape. And whether that particular politician that sees it is happy or sad about who endorsed who, it still makes us players in the game. And that's a big part of what branding means and matters.
Miguel, to your point too, how many people in here, just out of curiosity, have added or are adding retirees to their local since the last convention? I know Phoenix is in here, yeah. So San Francisco just submitted bylaws. So we highly suggested that last convention. And we're seeing change, which is why I'm not a big fan of doing the retirees right now. The same thing can happen with branding, in my opinion. If you think it makes it stronger, and I think we might have already even had a state or two voluntarily do it, let them do it. And that's been my point all along. So, next question.
Mike, okay. Mike Lopez, Secretary Treasurer of the CPF. And I asked this question with the state convention, I don't know if we have an answer back yet. You said you were going to pay for it, and how much was it going to cost in your estimation? Where was the money coming from?
Our PAC-Ed account that everybody pays into, we have a PAC-Ed account that can help. In my opinion, this is all about political education. It's about a PAC-Ed account, if that helps, Mike.
What's the estimation on the cost?
We don't have one. It depends on every state association. I'd have to audit your $750,000 estimate in California before you got that money. But I don't think it would be too cost prohibitive in most locals.
So is there going to be a cost factor? If there's, is it going on a resolution to convention, just to clarify? And if it is there going to be a cost factor?
There would, because it will be coming out of PAC-Ed, which already has an account set up to deal with this.
But we don't know how much that is.
Correct.
Okay. But that's dues money, members' money.
Correct.
Okay. The other thing is, when I took my oath at my last convention, I swore I was swearing that I was a union officer for the CPF. And the reason why I believe I'm a union officer with the CPF because we pay dues to the IAFF, we pay dues to the AFL-CIO. And so I want to make sure and clarify that I am a union officer, I hope. I have been for over 30 years. So let's clarify, that's my position on that.
Mike, I don't understand that. I think the innuendo escaped the room.
Oh, well, my brother Frank said the CPF's not a union. And I'm an officer, so I just clarified what it would be, Frank.
Mike, all I said was if somebody pulled up to the front of the CPF and it said the California Professional Firefighters and Jimmy Hoffa and his nephew, they go, I wonder if they're a union. I wonder if they're in the union. Or as of the CPF, they don't look like they're unionized.
Well, on our,
That's just Jimmy Hoffa, somebody pulled up, that's all I said.
the last thing you did say is the CPF's not a union. You did say that. Okay, I just want to clarify that.
It's an affiliate of a union.
So let's not split hairs. We're a union, come on. I took an oath.
You're part of the IAFF.
I'm 100%, I'm proud IAFF member. that. I'm in.
The IAFF when you're union.
Anyways. Okay. I just look at, I come out of CAL FIRE, and we had a long time branding issue with CAL FIRE with our mission and what we've done. We did change our name. We used to be CPF firefighters, and we changed to CAL FIRE. I understand the branding. I just don't see the need between the IAFF, the CPF, all the state associations. Again, I don't believe this is coming from the bottom up. I know it's not coming from our district. I don't know the whole realm of the IAFF and where it came from, but I'm just a firm believer that at the CPF, if you just look at the national scene at the last election, we did endorse Kamala Harris at the very last election. I do get that. And it was the right thing to do. History has shown it was the right thing to do. And why? Because if you look at the work protections that federal firefighters have undergone over the last year, the dismantling of that, it's been, we can give the mic to Charlie if he's around here, he can tell you how bad it's gotten, because we are a union. And we made that decision, and if we would have sat still and answered to our state legislators, our governor, and not done a thing, that does hurt us internally, it does hurt us in the CPF mission. It's different in Tennessee, I get that, I really respect that. But in California, that would hurt us if we did not do anything. And so those are the things that the autonomy of every local, every state has the ability to do. And that's my 2 cents, boss, and I agree with what, I'm glad you're here discussing this. Thank you very
I
much.
appreciate it, Mikey. You're a good man. So just real quick, if we endorsed Kamala Harris, we would not have gotten the Social Security Fairness Act passed, nor would we have gotten the HERO Act passed. We would not have protected the federal firefighters' right to collectively bargain, they would have lost it. We made our chess moves, and they paid off for us. Now, the autonomy of the state to do what it has to do as a state, same as it's not, the New York City firefighters have endorsed a candidate opposite of what the IAFF has endorsed. The Florida firefighters have endorsed a candidate opposite of what the IAFF endorsed. Having your own autonomy has merit. And that's why you should be able to do that. Sometimes it's going to be right in the state to do things that might be different from the international.
Tim, looks like you're next, Tim.
Yeah, GP and GST, thanks for coming and giving us the opportunity to hear this from the horse's mouth. You've mentioned a couple times we may have an emotional argument, and I hesitate to speak for my state. I'm from Arizona, but hopefully it's okay, Dan. I think for us, this is about business in our state. It's not emotional at all. I think we're trying to do what's best for the firefighters in Arizona, and our brand in Arizona matters for the business that we do there. Obviously, we support the IAFF and the 10th District 100%, and we're not looking to leave the IAFF over this, but I think for us, this is about making sure we can take care of Arizona firefighters as best as possible.
I respect that. I do. And I know that. I don't know about all the other states here. I don't know. I know, like Danny told me, he's like, in Arizona, we put the IAFF logo right on our letterhead. The IAFF logo is right on the license plate that you guys sell for the Arizona, whatever you, I don't know what you're raising money for with the license plate, but the IAFF logo is clear and present in the PFFA's business. I can appreciate that. You guys, I don't know, Danny explained to me a little bit about how the Republican Party in Arizona has some unique culture to it, right? And I don't live in that bubble, and I respect it, but at the end of the day, I'm still where I'm at. I can see the view from where I am. And I think those fights are gonna be those fights no matter what. And I don't think that our enemies, especially our enemies, there's those that are just unknowing, but our enemies know exactly who we are. They do their homework. And they know that PFFA is part of the IAFF, especially if they drive by a car with a license plate. So, I appreciate it.
Raise your hand if you have a question.
So I know that with the CPF, you have to be part of the IAFF to be a member in CPF, and I believe the same is in Arizona. Everywhere. Okay. In this rebranding, as this would probably be a constitution of bylaws change, would you now require every local to be a member of the state affiliate? That door should swing both ways.
That's a great question, and it's been an age-old argument in the IAFF. As a former state president, I would love to have mandatory affiliation. I think that really what happens a lot of times, and no offense to any locals that aren't in their respective state association, we've had it, every state's gone through it, I think, and I shouldn't say it so confidently, but I know I have in Massachusetts. We get hurt in the state house when we're not all together. And in my experience, when I was a legislative agent for the PFFM in Massachusetts, our chairman of Ways and Means, only district was the Steel Lowell. Lowell firefighters left the PFFM. Every nickel we had to go bend our knee before him, he would throw it in our face. They're his guys, that are his pals, that he grew up with, to get him elected. You don't speak for them. You know, it hurts your ability to lobby, period. And a lot of times, and again, no offense to anyone that's out, a lot of times we clash our own egos as leadership. And that's always been the history of Massachusetts. And I'll tell you, a lot of states, I hesitate to say most, but a lot have locals that are out. Texas comes to mind as probably like 25% of the firefighters in Texas are not in the Texas State Association of Firefighters. Rhode Island, it's almost 50-50. They're not a big state, but it matters. So we do have an issue. This is not that. This is just a branding concept. It doesn't change any autonomy. It doesn't introduce the concept of mandatory affiliation. That's a different argument. For, you know, it's something that I think we would be stronger there too. I don't think there's an appetite for it. I think a lot of, primarily, no offense to the big locals, I come from one. Big locals don't want to be, they want to have some, a big tail in the state association. To say, hey, we're not the average beer, we're paying the freight around here. We have more reps and senators in that state house than anybody else. And we want X, Y, and Z. And that I'm a chicken, you're a chicken hawk argument, you know, leads down bad roads and button heads. And usually, there's a lost election in this somewhere. So no, it doesn't address that, but that's a different issue, you know, I guess for a different day.
Thank you, GP. I kind of want to echo what Brother Tim from Arizona said back there. I think for a lot of us, this is not emotional in any way, shape, or form. I look at it as a business thing. 30 some odd years now in CPF. It was CPF when I got there. Federated Firefighters California predated me. But we at the CPF have invested a tremendous amount of money in our brand. And there is no question in Sacramento whatsoever that anybody questions who the CPF is. From the governor's office, where the CPF, legislative person became one of the chiefs of staff for the governor. We heard the governor last night in New Mexico talk about Diego, talking about Miguel. In New Mexico, there's no question who's getting shit done in New Mexico. And there's no question in California who's getting stuff done. And I guarantee you that's the exact same thing in Hawaii. Bobby Lee's back there doing the work today in every single one of these things. And for me, I look at the analogy of if the AFL-CIO at this convention, a week ago for you guys, who were there, imagine if the AFL-CIO came in and said, listen, by virtue of the vote of this floor, we think we should call you guys AFL-CIO firefighters. International's gone. That's out. It's saying the delegates spoke, away we go. We would go, that's fucking insane. We're never going to stand for that. I think at the state associations, if there's a necessity to rebrand, to do IAFF Delaware, IFF, Rhode Island, some of the places that are struggling to bring them up 100%. And that goes back to the voluntary argument, right? Let people who want to do it, build a toolkit, authorize money to help them do that, to help them rebrand. But for certain states, certain areas here, we've already built up our FCTC. We already have our apprenticeship program. We already have our California Firefighters Memorial. And every one of these things they exist because of the state association. And we're gonna hold on to that, not from an emotional standpoint. It is an investment. We built this house, we've laid the bricks, we poured the mortar, and there's a lot of time and energy that has been created. And this that takes that and makes that go away to a certain extent. I think the education piece is probably the most important part. If we have members that don't understand, or we have Congress members that don't understand, then that's on us. Us rebranding isn't going to be the magic bullet to go ahead and fix any of that. We're still going to have to do all of that work. And the truth is, the vast majority, not all, of the people who end up in Congress come up through the state houses to begin with. Right. So when I look at our U.S. senators, and I look at our governor, and I look at the other folks, they know who CPF has been from the day they got on the city council, to the day they went to the board of supervisors, to the day they ended up in the state assembly, the state senate, constitutional office. And when they then make that leap, and Alex Padilla or Adam Schiff or whoever it is over there, there's no question about who CPF is. Nor is there a question in your mind about who the IAFF is, because you guys doing on our behalf are relentless. You're on their door every day, making sure they know who the IAFF is. So I think that's, for me, it's not an emotional thing, it's an investment. I got a lot of time. We all invested in the CPF, and I'm sure that's true for the other state associations.
I will say this, they may all very well know who the CPF is, but we know for a fact they don't necessarily know the CPF is part of the IAFF, and that's the problem. And it's not just the electeds, it's the staffers that actually make the sausage. And that's really where the rubber meets the road, especially in the federal government. Hey, if you don't ascribe to the concept of branding, you don't think it's worth it, that it makes a difference in the political arena, that's your opinion, you know? But there's definitely a disconnect. What respectfully, John? I mean, maybe Brad Sherman has been in DC a long time, but he had some confusion. And that's not unheard of. That's pretty, I could see the Congresswoman this morning, trying to remember what the name of the IAFF was. And she was looking at me and Frankie. Now I do that too, I forget names and everything up there, but that's the real issue. That's the real problem.
So in the back here, Seth from Oakland, proud member of the CPF. For the GPS,
the IAFF, you proud of that too?
100%.
Attaboy.
I was 19. Well, thank you for the question. I appreciate it. I'm wondering if the IAFF would entertain a motion to rename the IAFF IUFF, so it's the International Union of Firefighters, because the implication is that it's not known if we're a union or not, which seems crazy to me. But if this is a branding issue, maybe we should consider that wholesale, and the IAFF should change too.
Two things, I thought about that, but I want to do the International Firefighters Union. It would be IFU. I don't think that's
Well played.
The problem isn't that they don't know that we're a union, that's where you're conflating it. There's no question that the IAFF is a union. The question is, who's in the IAFF? When we walk through the door of the federal government, and we say we represent 300,000 IAFF members across the United States, are they actually saying to themselves, none of them are in my state. My state's professional firefighters in Massachusetts, those guys that I worked with campaigns. That's our challenge. That's the issue. That the outside looking in doesn't always see that.
Thanks.
Sorry, David, here.
Thanks, GP and GSC and TV. So, I think our branding is our identity. It's a very important part of what we do as firefighters. It's how we distinguish ourselves amongst any other union, whether it's pipe fitters, carpenters, electricians, teachers, anybody. And I go back to 2 years ago, when we were going through the presidential election. What would have happened if the IAFF California firefighters endorsed Kamala, but the IAFF stayed?
How would we deal with that type of?
That would be what it is. In that particular scenario, Kamala Harris would have the endorsement of the IAFF California, and the rest of the IAFF would be neutral. Is it better that they don't know we're connected, or that they do? And I say it's better that they know that we're all part of one union, as opposed to not. That's my position. So this is going along. I mean, is that good, Dave?
Yeah,
We're killing you, Dave.
Yeah, last one, and then the CPF resolutions. These guys have been more than generous with their time. Dan, last question, and then a couple CPF resolutions so we can get everybody out of here and have a beer.
Okay. So for those who don't know me, my name is Dan Freiberg. I'm the president of the PFFA. And I do want to start off with the question, GP. You mentioned that there wouldn't be mandatory affiliation. Would the locals that aren't part of states have the ability to vote on this name change at convention?
Yes, they would, because they have a vote in how the Constitution is constructed, the IAFF, by virtue of their being dues-paying members in good standing.
Yeah, so for me, representing us, 9,000 firefighters in Arizona, that makes it even worse, frankly. I really didn't know that. I wasn't not set up, just trying to fully understand this thing. So, President Damage, back there, thanks for your comments. Arizona's different. I look around this room, you know, the GP from Massachusetts, GSD from California, my brothers in California, New Mexico, Hawaii. Those are collective bargaining states. We're a right-to-work state. Everything we have can be taken away like that. We have no protections. You know what else we got? We got a whole bunch of people who fucking hate unions. That's who we are. So we have no protection, and we have people that hate unions. And this surfaced 2 days ago. 2 days ago in Arizona, there was a ballot referral that was aimed and targeted at the teachers union. At the 11th hour, when all the bills were in a blender before signing died, there was a floor amendment by Jake Hoffman, who's no friend of anybody, but certainly not a friend of ours. Okay? That amendment in the middle of the night says that all public sector unions will lose their ability to meet and confer, have MOUs, and have contracts. That's what it said. It passed down party lines. It's going to the ballot. We don't have collective bargaining. We're not binding arbitration. We've got meet and confer agreements and MOUs, and they can be taken away like that. If this ballot referral goes through, that could be the end. Take all of our contracts, everything we worked for, and it can be ripped up. We've spent the last 48 hours, Brother Eric O'Hara, Tom Coretto, Trevin, Brian Moore, everybody on the team, we've been grinding to try to get this done. How have we done it? We've called in legislative favors to our friends in the Republican Party, because while this came through the Republican Party, we've got a lot of friends in the Republican Party. That's how we get business done in Arizona. The Republicans are the party in power. That's who we work with primarily. If we were the IAFF Arizona, and we were perceived to be the big Washington, D.C. union, they would just tell us to go fuck ourselves. But because we're the PFFA, and because we have this flag, and because they look at us, and they think about the Arizona firefighters, they're taking our calls. We're working it. We're hoping to stop this thing. But in my estimation, in a right-to-work state, without those protections, dealing with what we deal with every fucking day, starting at the bottom of the mountain. This is not bad for us, or this is not good for us. If it's good for you, it's good for you. Just don't push it down on us. So specifically to our brothers in New Mexico who haven't had the chance to make a resolution, stand with Arizona and California, please. It matters. Thank you.
You've been more than generous with your time. So we're going to get ready to get out of here. There are 4 resolutions that the California professional firefighters submitted. And I'm going to go over these briefly, and we are going to do an electronic Zoom, which principal officers will be invited to go over all the resolutions that are due Saturday. So these are going to be formatted, they'll have costs associated with it. Every leader and everybody that's going to convention, everybody that's not going to convention will see resolutions. We haven't got all of them yet. Staff's doing a tremendous job, it's a lot of work. Even just to do some of these lists, Phil Cordova's office and the General President's office have done a great job. So there are 4 resolutions that the California professional firefighters are submitting. And again, we're not going to get into these, we won't debate them. I just want to make sure everybody here knows what they are. The first one is the National Disaster Aid Funding. And I believe, Doc, correct me if I'm wrong, the bags are set through right here. This deals with the fact that the federal government has not paid money post the Eaton and Palisades fire. So they're asking the IAFF to work with the administration to get the funding for those. The General President already spoke about it. He said that this is a priority for the IAFF, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, GP, if I'm incorrect. The PPGMT is a priority. CPF has asked for that. I do not think we need to go with the new branding. And the last one that they submitted is for grant benefits to the trustees for healthcare, correct? And those are the 4 resolutions. I do not believe New Mexico, Arizona, or Hawaii have submitted resolutions. So short of that, if nobody has any questions. Oh, the award. Okay, yes. Sorry. Caucus is done. We got one more piece of business. I'm going to bring up Miguel Tippman, but first, seriously, please give a big round of applause for him.